السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to begin today's class, and we're beginning from فصل في بيان ما يحرم استعماله من الأواني وما يجوز. We are way too far. We should be. Here we go. Yep. Now, before we start, inshallah ta'ala, I did want to share some things with you. This, for example, is a copy of الإقناع. This one, I believe, is written by Al-Imam Al-Shabrawi. Tamam. So this is, if you're not familiar with manuscripts, this is actually one of the good ones. This one right here is another manuscript of Al-Iqna'. As you can see, it's still pretty clear. You'll just have to zoom in on some parts due to tape, as you can see in the middle, ran over it. And if you go all the way to the end, you can normally see the person who actually wrote it, but this one might be part 1 and part 2 because it's cutting off right here. So I just want to show you those examples. I think that second one was done by Al-Juhari. As for the things written on Al-Iqna', Kalam Jameel, is Taqreer al-Sheikh Awad. What's interesting is that we don't have the biography of the Sheikh. Many people said it's just lost. People forgot, no one documented it, and we don't know who the Sheikh is. But this is the number 1 go-to commentary on Al-Iqna'. Tamam. أعانكم الله أخي الحبيب. نعم. So this is your go-to commentary on Al-Iqna' in Azhar. Everyone comes here first before even going to Al-Bujayrami, because he came after Al-Bujayrami. So a lot of his comments is connected to that which you can read at Al-Bujayrami, but summarized and giving you the conclusion and not giving you a lot of debate. It's a beautiful, beautiful commentary. It's very simple, very basic. Tamam. You'll notice that there's spaces in between the sentences. Those spaces are indications that that's a new comment. So after the space, you see a word. ضَامًا إِلَى ذَلِكَ. So he's commenting on those words right there. And that's the commentary. من الفوائد يحتمل أن يكون من اسم بمعنى بعض في محل نصب مفعول. It's a beautiful, beautiful manuscript. It's really easy to read. And as I said, it's a go-to حاشية. Then you have Al-Imam Al-Ujhuri's حاشية. Don't get him confused with the Maliki Ujhuri. This is a different one. There's a Shafi'i Ujhuri. Tamam. And we have other ones that are more complete than this one. Normally people won't read through Al-Ujhuri's حاشية, but there are important elements throughout the حاشية that people, due to those, people will go back to. Take, for example, in the introduction, we spoke about how Ar-Rahman is before Ar-Rahim on the basis that Ar-Rahman has become a alam, a name, not just a sifa anymore, not just like Ar-Rahim. Kalam Jameel, Who made that assumption? Who made that claim? Al-Ujhuri. So they got it from here. But normally, no one really reads through this a whole lot. It'll be one read through, take some benefits down, and that's pretty much it. Not because it's not beneficial, but the other ones already have everything you need. So it's just minor extras that have been stated. That's why they'll come back to this. I do not think this was published yet. I know a long time ago there used to be a Halabi copy, but I don't think since then anyone has worked on it again. Close this. Bismillah. This next one is a copy or a piece of Al-Bujayrami, and you know Al-Bujayrami. You can find that. It's been published. It needs a really good edition, but you should be familiar with this by now since it's on Shamila, it's on PDF. Oh, Halabi copies. Let me see if I can pull something up so you can see. It's let me see if I have something. Tabat al-Halabi. Oh, no. Interesting, I don't. Not in a PDF form, I mean. Oh, actually, wait a minute. Nabrawi. Here. I have a Nabrawi open. It would be something looking like this. That's Al-Halabi's copy. Kalam Jamil. They usually come with a pink paper. Here, let me show you something. Look at the Telegram group. I'll take a picture of one right now. I'll put the picture up there so you can see. All right, it's uploading right now. So you should be able to see it, okay, in a minute or so. I don't know why it's acting up on my phone. But you'll be able to see it. These copies, even though they look pretty rough, they're actually considered some of the best copies of books ever printed and published. And the reason why is that major ulama would be studying and working on these texts. That's why we like them very much. And this is the Hashia of Nabrawi. Tamam? Okay, we said this is Al-Bujayrami. If we go to this one right here, here's As-Sija'i. I'm sorry, what do you mean? Printed by... DK usually just takes previous books and rewrites them. Nabrawi, there you go. They take books that are already out there and they print it again. And this is why their work overall is usually horrible. And I have plenty of books that I can show you examples from. Allah al-Musta'an. Here's the Hashia of Al-Imam al-Sija'i. Again, similar to Al-Ujhuri, they'll just quote important points that were mentioned, maybe unique opinions that were stated, and that's pretty much it. No one will really read into it that much. The most hawashi that people will read into are the things done on Shuruh al-Minhaj and Al-Bajuri, Bujayrami, Dimyati, Saqaf, Bajuri. Did I say Bajuri already? Yeah, I did. Al-Jamal. But before them, not so much unless it's on Minhaj. Here is the Hashia of Al-Marhumi. It's a nice copy. You can read it in a with ease. It's very clear and obvious. Tamam. Close that. This right here is a khatm. Kalam Jamil. A khatm is more of like a ceremonial sharh of the last segments of a book. Tamam. And then usually the scholar will add at the end his sanad and things like that. And maybe speak a little bit about the madhab and then give ijazah to everyone that attended the class. And sometimes that will be written at the end. So let's see if he did any sanad here. Oh, I see fawaid, muharrid dalail. No. هذا آخر. Yeah, so all he did was give an ending, a final word, and basically they ended the class that way. And look, this was written by, I guess, one of his students, Al-Jizi. Tamam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. This is Al-Qalyubi's Hashiyah. Tamam. It's beautiful. Really nicely written. And Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So I forget which one is this one. I forget which one this one is that I opened up. Oh, here we go. Madabaghi. It says it right there. Need my glasses on. Al-Madabaghi right here. It's the Hashiyah of Al-Madabaghi. This is part 2. He does have a part 1 somewhere. I think I might have it. I just have to look for it up. And then you have right here is Khatm Abu Najah. Abu Najah was a scholar from Fayoum who moved up north in Egypt to a city called Fuwa. These are screenshot manuscripts. Screenshot because it's part of the software of a Sayyidah Zainab in Cairo. So again, same idea. He's commenting on the ending part and speaking a little bit about that, and then ending it with more of like an ijazah ceremony setting for the students. Tamam. Oh, I don't know why. I'll move this over here. I don't know why that's opening. There we go. All right. Oh, you said you need to review the new print of Burayrumi. Yeah, we'll have to see, inshallah. How many of these hashiyah are complete, actually? All the ones that I mentioned are complete. Printed now, that's another problem. Tamam? I don't know. Why is this opening? Like, anyway, let's get to our book, inshallah ta'ala. If you want any of those manuscripts, just please let me know. And inshallah ta'ala, I'll go ahead and I can send it to you bi'idhnillah. Tamam? Okay. With that being said, let's go ahead and begin, inshallah ta'ala. He says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ لِذَكَرٍ أَوْ غَيْرِهِ اسْتِعْمَالُ شَيْءٍ من أواني الذهب وأواني الفضة بالإجماع ولقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تشربوا في آنية الذهب والفضة ولا تأكلوا في صحافها متفق عليه ويقاس غير الأكل والشرب عليهما وإنما خص بالذكر لأنهما أظهر وجوه الاستعمال وأغلبها ويحرم على الولي أن يسقي الصغير بمصعط من إنائهما. المصعط means something like similar to a bottle or a pacifier type of thing, an instrument that you use to feed infants. You should not use something made out of gold and silver. And of course he's pointing out that the dalil for this Kalam Jamil goes back to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do not drink from the utensils made out of gold and silver. Tamam. And he said that eating and drinking were mentioned because that is how people would normally use them. And that is the ghalib of usage. Kalam Jamil. He says, ولا فرق بين الإناء الكبير والصغير حتى ما يخلل به أسنانه. When we say آنية, tamam, we mean all types of tools that you would use. Kalam Jamil. Even if it's a toothpick. Because whatever is declared as haram, even using it in a minor way or a small amount would still be haram. Would still be haram. والميل الذي يكتحل به إلا لضرورة. The meal, in Egypt they'll call it mail. And what it means is the eyeliner stick. المكحل. Like in the hadith, حتى يضع المكحل في المكحلة. When it's speaking about intercourse. It's the eyeliner, the kuh, stick that you put into the bottle to collect some of it and then put it under your eyes or on your eyeline. تمام? He says إلا لضرورة كأن يحتاج إلى جلاء عينه بميل. يعني it's the only thing available. كلام جميل. Now one might argue that since there's gold in our phones, a lot of people don't realize this, on the motherboard in there is an amount of gold. And in some devices, even a little bit of silver. But there's a darura here. That's the only way it works. Tamam? He says, فَيُبَاحُ اسْتِعْمَالُهُ. If there's that darura. This darura also comes somewhere else. Like you cut yourself and you need a disinfectant. People could either use betadine or alcohol, right? Or in Egypt, there's something else. I don't know what it's called in English, but we call it there mukrukum. Now, what is it exactly? I don't remember. Because as I grew up, people stopped using that and they started to use betadine or alcohol. But back when I was growing up, we had this thing. It was either a bright red and literally it dyed your skin red. And then there was a purple brand too. And I need to research it, but it's just one of those childhood memories that you never get around to actually inspecting. So the pharmacy that's in front of your house only has alcohol. No betadine, no makrukum, no nothing else. Only that. And then there's a further pharmacy down the street that does have betadine. Which one do you go to? You see, the alcohol is going to be najis. The betadine won't be. Some people try to argue for the medical alcohol and say, what? It's not meant for drinking. And we tell them, go tell the prisoners in the prisons to stop drinking it then. Sure, it'll give your stomach a tummy ache, and you'll have to, if you take too much, you could actually kill yourself, but you could also drink too much to kill yourself, right? Does it give the people the desire that they are seeking? Yeah. Even the alcohol and perfume does. Yes, they have to water it down to a certain extent and things like that, but does it or not? It does. فوجدت فيها شدة المطربة والإسكار. تمام. So which pharmacy do you go to? The close one or the far one? No, you can go to the close one because that's a darura. Heat, isolation, and conductivity. What were you referring to, أخي الحبيب؟ عفوا. تمام. نعم. نعم نعم in the devices. نعم. بارك الله فيكم. قال والوضوء منه صحيح. Why is he pointing this out? Because in other madhahib, if the act was haram, then the ibadah is not considered valid. So, for example, if you stole a piece of land, غصب, can you pray on it? Yes or no? Well, the mu'tamad is you shouldn't, but if you did, and you followed all the rules of the salah, then your salah is sahih. Sometimes they'll refer to this also as the mas'ala, they'll refer to al-khuff al-maghsub, taking someone else's khuff, doesn't belong to you. If you do mash on it, does it, is it suffice? Is it accepted? Yes, as opposed to other madhahib where it wouldn't be. He says, وَالْمَأْخُوذُ مِنْهُ مِنْ مَأْكُولٍ أو غيره حلال لأن التحريم للاستعمال لا لخصوص ما ذكر. كلام جميل. يعني أن التحريم that has to do with استعمال الذهب والفضة has to do with the استعمال only. كلام جميل. It does not have to do with anything beyond that. واضح؟ ولذلك in all of those scenarios we came and said what? The amal is sahih. However, many of our ulama, they suggest that when you run into the situation like you want to make wudu and that's the only thing that's available, how do you do this? They said find another container, another way to scoop it out. Kalam Jamil, to scoop it out and then use it. Kalam Jamil. طيب, can I eat from it? Yes, you can eat from it. But it's best to take the food out elsewhere. Tamam. The akl would be allowed. It will be halal. The food would be halal. But the usage of the utensil is the problem. Kalam Jamil. Again, that's a farq that other schools might differ with us on this matter. Tamam. Some of the ulama, they said if it's extremely minor things, it might be overlooked. But realistically, to claim af, you have to claim necessity too. That's the whole point of afu. And this is why overall they did not go with the idea of af that easily. When we mention the phones, well, there's a necessity, right? The device won't work without it. Substitutions, alternatives are not that easy and frequent. تمام؟ قال ويحرم البول في الإناء منهما أو من أحدهما. Either or. كلام جميل. طيب, هل يحل الاستنجاء بهما? Can I use one of them for istinja? No, but it would still be valid if you did. Kalam Jamil. Some of them argued and said, but if they're too smooth, then it is breaking the conditions of what you could use to wipe with. Tamam. And there's an ittifaq in our school, like if this is currency that people are using, there's a stamp from the government on it, then that's haram for you to use. And the hurma might increase even more if it has something like a verse from the Quran on it, or La ilaha illallah on it, right? قال كما يحرم استعمالهما يحرم أيضا اتخاذهما من غير استعمال. A lot of people come and say, well, I don't want to use it, but I received a metal trophy that is made out of silver or made out of gold. Can I put it up on the shelf in between my books? Can I put it in like a niche, like a china cabinet that looks fancy? I can put all my medals and achievements in. If it's made of gold and silver, no, you can't. You still can't use it. You cannot even use it for decoration. كلام جميل. لا يجوز. قال لأن ما لا يجوز استعماله للرجال ولا لغيرهم يحرم اتخاذه أي ابتداء كآلة الملاهي. If it's something that no one's allowed to use, not men, not other than men, and the scenario that we're speaking about, yeah, no one can use it, men or women. كلام جميل. Therefore, there is no way that it can possibly use. Now he uses another example like Elit Malahi. And some argue that would be a bad example here because it is already forbidden ibtida'an. Meaning you shouldn't be having a musical instrument in your home to begin with. This does not include things that are allowed by consensus, such as the duf, or things that are debated upon, such as the yara. You know, Imam al-Rafi'i said the yara is okay. Imam al-Nawawi said the yara is not okay. And the Shafi'iyya since then have been either siding with the Rafi'i or siding with al-Nawawi on this mas'ala. Why did Imam al-Rafi'i say that al-yara is okay? Because of how people used it. It wasn't used realistically for music sessions. It was used more for a community event, not necessarily amusement per se, not even necessarily entertainment per se. Think about Europeans when they went into battle, and you had a banner person, then you had drummers, right? The drum wasn't there for people to have music as they went to war. No, it was a tool for encouragement, of power, of might. When you are marching with your army and you hear the drummer, it gives you that awe feeling that, getting you ready for the war. So from this angle and this type of usage, Imam al-Rafi'i, he's noticing that many communities, whether in Asia or the Middle East and elsewhere, use things like a mizmar. They're similar to a flute. It's called a yara. What's different between the yara and the flute is that the flute is literally made as an entertainment musical instrument, while the yara is a very simple, prolonged whistle, if you may. Yes, it gives you a little bit of a flute sound, but nothing heavy. If you classify it as alat al-malahi, then it's haram. If you classify it as a social tradition, then you're arguing that it's similar to the duf, then it would be halal. Remember, there is no direct statement on any of this except for the duf. But why the duf and nothing else? Well, it's the only tool that was normally used. No one used really anything else at that time except for the duf. Well, why is everything else considered haram? Because music in general is not something that people that hold the Quran at the highest levels in their heart normally do. It's just not us. It's not what Muslims are about. That's why they call it malahi. The word malahi, and to be honest, this word even gets under my skin a little bit when they call theme parks malahi, because a lot of people don't realize what the term malahi actually means. It's ma yulhi. It's things that distract you. They're distractions. Kalam Jamil. Can one not argue that the illah is not mundabita? Is that what you're trying to say? Just write it in Arabic. You mean of the music instruments in general? Now, you mean you're talking about the illah of musical instruments in general, right? Naam, ahsantum. And that is at the core of the assessment, right? Is like, what is the reasoning exactly? Back at the time of our Salaf, and when I say Salaf, I'm not speaking about the first 3 generations or the first 3 centuries, which FYI, they're 2 different things, but people keep on mixing them up, 3 generations with 3 centuries, but that's okay. Back then, the only people that sat around music and singing were the bad people, right? People with bad habits, people that are drinking or doing drugs or hanging out with women that they're not supposed to, etc., etc., etc. So already there's a negative impression of these things. Could one come today and argue that that has maybe changed slightly? I mean, it is not too far-fetched to come and say Beethoven, Mozart, this is not stuff where bad people listen to. This is stuff where elegant, classy people listen to, right? That argument actually started around the time that those things came out. And then when the issues of nationalism came about, I know it sounds weird that I'll connect it, but it does. You had people in these countries that were pro the nation that they were from. So they sang things that has to do with the nation and the identity of the citizens. And then all of a sudden, you had hundreds of scholars throughout Egypt saying Kulthum is halal to listen to. Why? Because, well, one, they looked at it from a nationality, qawmi type of approach, and it became more like, oh no, listening to Kulthum is haram, oh, you're against Egypt. But could one argue that some of these things are not malahi? I don't know, I'm not a faqih. However, our scholars in Hadramaut, it has always been their tradition, before Rafi' al-Nawawi and after Rafi' al-Nawawi, to use the yara' in social events. So they called for the mu'tamad for them to be what al-Rafi'i said, meaning duf and yara' are allowed. Could that go beyond that? Like the drums of marching. There's a high possibility that you could indeed add that to the discussion. Wallahu a'lam. But again, I'm not a faqih, so that would need a fatwa or an assessment from an actual faqih. Tamam? He says, ويحل استعمال كل إناء طاهر ما عدا ذلك. يعني ما عدا ما ذكر. يعني any other type of ina, tool or utensil, kalam jamil, that's not made out of gold and silver. Even if the valuation for us that we consider it to be more or better than gold and silver. So a cup, a glass made out of diamonds, could you use it? Yes. Why? He's gonna come and mention the reasonings, the ilal for this, for gold and silver, and from that ilal you'll understand. In short, until we get to that point, right, we have two illas, right? One of them is al-khuyala and al-tafakhur, showing off, right? Which would entail lifting your status above your brothers and sisters. If you have a glass cup that's made out of diamonds, would the spectator assume diamonds the first thing? Or would he expect glass or fiberglass or crystal, right? There's too many possibilities. Therefore, the first idea to their mind won't be gold or silver, won't even be that you're wealthy. It would be, that person needs to shine his glass cups a little bit more because I can do mine, make them mine look better, that he bought from Walmart, right? Then, because they do not contain that initial impression of excessive wealth, they do not add them into the discussion. But he'll speak on this more, inshallah ta'ala. He says, سواء أكان من نحاس أم من غيره. Whether if it's from nuhas, copper, or something else, doesn't matter. فإن موه غير النقد كإناء أو كإناء نحاس وآلة حرب من نحاس أو نحوه بالنقد. Now, what do people normally do? People today, they'll use colors of gold and silver on utensils to give it the gold or silver look. Back in the older days, they would either paint it entirely with gold, so they'll get something that's another metal, right? Melt gold and literally dip the whole thing in gold and take it out and let it dry and solidify again. Tamam? Or they'll use a paintbrush type of instrument and tool and decorate the utensils utilizing liquid gold or silver and let it dry and solidify in its spot. Tamam? This only becomes a problem if ولم يحصل منه شيء ولو بالعرض على النار. If I were to take that utensil and heat it up again, if I get one drip from it, then it's haram to use. I don't need to necessarily do this. I can do a taqdeer of this. I can do a taqdeer. How do you know? You're holding a cup. It's painted on it a flower with liquid gold that has solidified. If you run your finger over it, you can barely feel that it's there. More than likely, if you put that over the flame, you're not going to get a drip. But if you actually feel it, there's a thick layer there, then you know, if I put this on the fire, I'm going to get out a few drips of gold. That's when it becomes haram. He says, أو موه النقد بغيره أو صدى مع حصول شيء من المموه به أو الصدى حل استعماله لقلة المموه في الأولى فكأنه معدوم ولعدم الخيلاء في الثانية. What if I would do the reverse? I get a mug made out of pure gold or pure silver, right? And then I get black paint or copper, liquid copper, and I dip it into it and I cover it completely. Therefore, anyone looking at it will never assume that there's gold and silver anywhere near it. The illah of khuyala, showing off, has gone away. Therefore, would it be a problem? The answer is no. But would paint be enough? Or would it have to be something like copper, where it's an actual metal? This is going to come up shortly when he starts speaking about the dabba. And I mentioned paint. because there's going to be a discussion on when you're fixing a utensil, utilizing gold and silver. Can I put my mouth on the part that I used gold or silver to fix? As we'll see shortly. He says, فَإِنْ حَصَلَ شَيْءٌ مِّنَ النَّقْدِ فِي الْأُولَى لِكَثْرَتِهِ. If you were to take that utensil with the painted flower on it and put it over the flame, and something came from it, a drop of gold came from it, or a drop of silver came from it, that's haram. أو لم يحصل شيء من غيره في الثانية لقلته. Or you can't even see or even know that there's gold or silver in that other one that's either covered in paint or copper, kalam jamil, then since it is, in that second scenario, it's not like you're actually using the gold or the silver. حرم استعماله وكذا اتخاذه. if one of these things do actually take place. تمام. قال فالعلة مركبة من تضييق النقدين والخيلاء وكسر قلوب الفقراء. تمام. So the illah here is two parts. I know the way that he pointed it out, it almost seems like there are three. There's still only two. Kalam Jamil. What is it? The illah here is khuyala, and within khuyala there's kasr qulub al-fuqara. Kalam Jamil. Then there is tadyiq al-naqdayn. Now, tadyiq al-naqdayn, it means that naqd should remain circulated. The only time that it's not circulated is that if you're saving. If you're not saving, then it should be in circulation, not used for decoration, right? You're not making clothes out of gold and silver. You're not making utensils out of gold and silver. No. Kalam Jamil. Some of our ulama will simply just say al-khuyala and kasr qulub al-fuqara and make those two the illah, instead of actually saying that there's tadyiq involved. ولكن the overall and overwhelming assessment of our ulama is the tadyiq, taking the money out of circulation and using it incorrectly, and the khuyala. Tamam. He says, وَيَحْرُمُ تَمْوِيهُ سَقْفِ الْبَيْتِ وَجُدْرَانِهِ. نعم. It is haram to utilize gold and silver when decorating your home. Tamam. On the walls, on the ceiling, etc. It is haram to do this at the Kaaba. It is haram to do this in masajid, according to many of our ashab. As a matter of fact, none of these are limitations. These are merely examples. It is haram to use gold and silver beyond monetary needs and usages. Tamam. The only other time that you could use it is either jewelry or for a necessity like for fixing utensils. Fixing utensils, like the dabba, which we'll speak about in a moment, inshallah. قال وإن لم يحصل منه شيء بالعرض على النار. The hurma remains, and we're not looking to see if I melt it, I can come up with a drip or two. No, that's irrelevant. Utilizing these things for decoration is haram, period. Tamam. He says, وَيَحْرُمُ اسْتِدَامَتُهُ إِنْ حَصَلَ مِنْهُ شَيْءٌ بِالْعَرْضِ عَلَيْهَا وَإِلَّا فَلَا. The initial usage is haram. The hurma will be a continuous hurma. And these are some of the very most dangerous things wallahi out there. we all make mistakes and we all fall into what is considered haram. But do we stop and think what of our haram continues even if we stop doing it? So painting it on my house, gold and silver, is haram. That's haram. So doing it is haram, regardless of how, if I were to melt it all, I would get anything out of it or not. Push that aside for now. That's regardless. After I do it, does it continue being haram? They said yes, if it is enough where you would get a drip or so from it. If I were to take a flame or a torch against the wall and where I painted using gold and silver, if I can get a drip of each from it, then the hurma is continuous hurma, meaning my sin continues. Is this daily, hourly, by the minute? The best dabt for this, according to our ashab, is every moment you were able to change it would be a moment as if you redid it again. In other words, if you're sleeping, you might not be getting the hurma. But when you woke up and you were doing nothing for an hour, you could have changed that sin and you did not, then it is as if you did it all over again, sin-wise. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى العفو والعافية. He says, وَيَحِلُّ اسْتِعْمَالُ وَاتِّخَاذُ النَّفِيسِ كَيَاقُوتٍ, rubies, وَزَبَرْجَدٍ, peridot, وَبَلَّورٍ, crystal, بكسر الباء وفتح اللام, ومرجان, also known in the kalam of the layman as murjan بضم الميم. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, that it's coral, but there's a certain type of coral that they refer to as murjan. I forget what it's called right now. It's different types of coral. وعقيق, and that's agate. I think that's what they call it. I forget if that's the correct pronunciation in English. Let me write it down for you. العقيق. والمتخذ من الطيب المرتفع كمسك وعنبر وعود. All of these things it's allowed for you to use, even though, as I mentioned earlier, the valuation of it might even be more than gold and silver sometimes, right? Why? Because they're not as unique as gold and silver. When people see other people with this, they don't think diamond, they don't think ruby, they don't think pearls. For the most part, they just think it's some sort of knockoff that you got from a gas station, right? No one thinks it's the real thing. Tamam? He says, لأنه لم يرد فيه نهي. نعم بالفعل لم يرد فيه نهي. However, any act that is an act of showing off would be considered haram. It would get to that due to khuyala and كسر قلوب الفقراء. Yes, it can definitely happen. Be modest in everything you do. Now, he mentions الطيب المرتفع. الطيب المرتفع just means high status, high end. So you can buy an oil that's very, very expensive, like pure oud, for example. It's very expensive. Okay. Would that be haram? No. Would there be khuyala there? No. But if you can buy something simpler, there's no reason, because it'll almost be like a waste. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى العفو والعافية. يقول وما ضبب من إناء بفضة ضبة كبيرة وكلها أو بعضها وإن قل لزينة حرم استعماله واتخاذه أو صغيرة بقدر الحاجة فلا تحرم للصغر ولا تكره للحاجة. This statement, كلام جميل. Here, let me see if I can open up Minhaj for you. Ah, there we go. I already had it open. Bismillah. Let's go up here. This is my copy, so if it looks a little weird, sorry. It's different. All right. His whole statement is basically that which you see in front of you, just slightly modified. Now, you saw, he says, وَمَا ضُبِّبَ مِنْ إِنَاءٍ بِفِضَّةٍ ضَبَّةً كَبِيرَةٍ. Kalam Jamil. So, if we start from the beginning of the ضبة. Oh, did I skip it? Oh, there we go. إلا ذهب كذا اتخاذه في الأصح. He's saying, if you notice, he's actually following ويحل الموه والنفيس كياقوت في الأظهر. The paragraphs are very, very close. وما ضبب بذهب أو فضة ضبة كبيرة. You look at الإقناع, look at both, and you'll see لزينة حرم أو صغيرة بقدر الحاجة فلا، أو صغيرة لزينة أو كبيرة لحاجة جاز في الأصح. تمام. Now, and you'll see right after this paragraph and the following paragraphs, you'll see he'll say وضبط موضع الاستعمال لنحو شرب كغيره فيما ذكر من التفصيل لأن الاستعمال منسوب إلى الإناء كله. كلام جميل. And if you compare the paragraph with that, you'll see it's almost as if he's explaining Minhaj in Al-Iqna'. Now let's read what he said. He said, وَمَا ضُبِّبَ. What's ضَبَّة? Certain utensils like mugs made out of wood, if they got a crack in them, there was no way to seal it. They didn't have a sealant chemical or solution. So what they would do would be melting gold or silver and running it into the cracks, and then like almost doing like a belt or stitches like scene over the gap that they filled. So it would look like something like this. Will it give me a white screen? No. It's all right. I think you understand what I'm saying. So there's a crack in a wood mug, right? And they fill in the crack with gold or silver, and then they make almost like a buckle thing or a stitch thing across that line, and it will hold it all in place and seal up the crack. Tamam? Min ina'in bifiddatin. You see he's saying fidda. If you look at Minhaj, it says bizahabin aw fidda. That where it says bizahab, here's a fa'idah, even though we're not doing Minhaj, but here's a fa'idah. Our ashab from the Khurasaniyin, they said dhahab aw fidda in all of their books for some reason. Even though those before the Khurasani tariqah, it was always fidda. Where did the dhahab come in? This might have been out of error or mistake. The Iraqis in the tariqah al-Iraqiyya, they said silver. It was always known and only known as this being or pertaining to silver and not gold. So why did the Khurasanis add that? They think it's out of error. Some think that it was due to like they assumed it based upon a qiyas approach. Wallahu a'lam. Tamam. He says ضبة كبيرة. ضبة كبيرة meaning it's too much. It's big. It's overwhelming it. Kalam Jamil. If that happens, then it becomes what? Haram if it was for zina. If it was for zina, meaning decoration. But if it was for haja, would it be allowed? Tamam? It would be. So, kabira, a big dabba, for zina, it's haram. For haja, a need to fix it, not decoration, then that's okay. That's a big ضبة. كلام جميل. He says, وَإِن قَلَّ, يعني even that كبيرة seems a little bit on that utensil, حرم استعماله واتخاذه. أو صغيرة, but if the ضبة was صغيرة, it was a small fix, بقدر الحاجة, then it's جائز, right? ولا تكره للحاجة, it's not even مكروه. Then he's going to give you the evidence. لما روى البخاري عن عاصم الأحول قال رأيت قدح رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عند أنس بن مالك رضي الله تعالى عنه وكان قد انصدع أي انشق, يعني there was a crack in it, فسلسله بفضة أي شده بخيط أو بخيط فضة. That's not really a thread, even though it sounds like it's a thread. No, it's just filling in the crack. تمام. والفاعل هو أنس كما رواه البيهقي قال أنس لقد سقيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في هذا القدح أكثر من كذا وكذا. Now, I don't normally get into external khilaf, but the other schools, Kalam Jamil, had issue with this entire concept. Why? Because they said that this hadith was not suffice. Why wasn't it suffice? They said, see, Asim al-Ahwal saw the mug with Anas ibn Malik. Asim describes this mug as cracked and fixed with a dabba of fadda, right? Asim and others narrate from Anas saying, this is the cup of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But where's the connection? Okay, so this is the cup. Okay, the cup is now fixed using what? Dabb. There's no correlation between the two. Right? There's no correlation between the two events. To make the matter worse is there's another athar. It's weak, but it has Anas' stepfather saying to Anas, why would you do that to his mug? Now, initially, that's a that's a big problem, right? Because now what you're looking at is this mug became cracked after the fact, after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Kalam Jamil. So when did this happen? When did this happen? Now, we have a response to their issue. Two, as a matter of fact. Number one, there's an athar from Ibn Sirin, right? And Ibn Sirin says, we were with Anas, and the handle of the cup broke. So we put in a metal handle. And the elders were very upset, and they said, you should not be putting anything on. And Anas wanted to make a handle made out of gold or silver. Now, this incident from Ibn Sirin is sahih. It's actually at one of the highest levels of authenticity. The issue of Anas' stepfather saying don't do something that was not happening at the day of the Prophet ﷺ, is weak. And if it is even anything correct, more than likely it's going back to what Ibn Sirin is talking about, not to the dabba itself. In addition, all of the tabi'een mention that the Sahaba, most of them, or many of them, had cups with ضبة of silver in them. تمام. And no one ever, I mean, we have thought of the Sahaba, their own cups have ضبة in it without any objection. And therefore, there is no true objection here. وَلِلَّهِ الْحَمْدِ. He says, أو صغيرة وكلها أو بعضها لزينة أو كبيرة كلها لحاجة. نعم, the صغيرة, if it has a little bit for zina on it, يعني it's a small ضبة but it's done for zina, كلام جميل, then it would be جائز, تمام, but it's makruh. Then he says كبيرة كلها لحاجة جاز مع الكراهة. He changes it a little bit from the first one, right? Now he's saying that حاجة in the كبيرة is okay, but it will have a little bit of كراهة in it. نعم. Because if it's getting to the point where it's consuming the mug, for example, or the utensil, then, well, يعني this is now what? It's departing from being wood or ceramic or what have you to changing into something that's gold and silver. And this is why the karaha is there. Tamam. However, many of our ashab, the mutakhirin, after يعني al-Khatib, they said, if there's a necessity, then there's no karaha. In other words, how they're wording it and understanding it is that if the necessity was not that high, therefore there will be a karaha present. تمام. والله أعلم. He says أما في الأولى فللصغر وكره لفقد الحاجة وأما في الثانية فللحاجة وكره للكبار. He says وضبط موضع الاستعمال لنحو شرب كغيره فيما ذكر من التفصيل. نعم. If you have a ضبة on a mug, you have a wooden mug and you did a ضبة on it, that's gold and silver. Can your mouth be put onto the spot where the ضبة is, meaning your lips, your tongue is coming into contact with the part of the mug that you just added gold and silver to? Would that be a problem? You can even see it on Minhaj on the screen, right? Where he says وضبط موضع الاستعمال كغيره في الأصح. كلام جميل. Why? Because it's still called a wooden mug. Oh, but my mouth is touching gold or silver. It's a part of it that's fixed, but that does not change the status of that utensil in its entirety. This is why he says لأن الاستعمال منسوب إلى الإناء. Other of our ashab, they said no, that's too much, and now that'll be like you using gold and silver directly. تمام. He says تنبيه مرجع الكبر والصغر العرف. العرف means يعني what the average spectator would assume by looking at something like this. تمام. He says فإن شك, and you could also say فإن شك يجوز هذا أو ذاك في الحقيقة. قال فالأصل الإباحة. الأصل الإباحة. If you have doubt, then the ibaha will remain as is. Because with doubt, you go back to your primary rules, and the primary rule here would be what? That you were allowed to use the ضبة in the first place. قال وخرج بالفضة الذهب فلا يحل استعمال إناء ضبب بذهب سواء أكان معه غيره أم لا لأن الخيلاء في الذهب أشد من الفضة. تمام. نعم. The dhahab, we've already pointed out that that's not accepted, and I showed you right there how Imam al-Rafi'i, he said dhahab, and then look, Imam al-Nawawi came and said al-madhhabu tahrimu ضبة الذهب مطلقا والله أعلم. And actually, if you want to see like some of the justification, and also if you ever have additional questions that you want to explore more, you can definitely just message me and I can share like some notes from here with you. That's fine. See, the opposing opinion says gold is like silver. This was mentioned by Al-Rafi'i and many of the Mutaqaddimin, mostly the Khurasanis. Some of the Iraqis did indeed mention the gold as well, and some of the Nudhar, those that came after Al-Rafi' and Al-Nawawi, such as Ibn al-Rif'a al-Isnawi, Al-Adra'i, and others said we should just treat gold and silver the same. It seems to be the overall opinion, but that's wrong. That's not true. Tamam. The rest is just extended discussions on this similar topic. Now, قال وبالطاهر النجس. That should be right here. وبالطاهر النجس كالمتخذ من ميتة فيحرم استعماله فيما ينجس به كماء قليل ومائع لا فيما لا ينجس به كماء كثير أو غيره مع الجفاف. نعم, you cannot utilize the hide of a mayta before it gets properly cleaned. So you ought not to use it with things that are wet or have moist, as that would be spreading يعني the najasa. But if it's dry and you're carrying it along with other things that are dry, that's easier, as the najasa of the jild of the mayta won't transmit to something else. Tamam. He says furu'. Furu' means when we speak about a far' in a masail, that means now that we have the general concept understood, now there's additional discussions that come into play after these principles. And he starts right here with سمر الدراهم في الإناء كالتطبيب. You'll see this actually in many countries. They'll take something similar to a glass soda bottle cap and they'll nail it to something to seal something with it, right? I've seen this in many countries. Tamam. They used to do that with gold and silver coins, and they would hammer them into something to seal it. He said it's considered exactly like the ضبة. There's no difference. قال فيأتي فيه التفصيل السابق بخلاف طرحها فيه. But this would be different than just taking a gold coin or a silver coin and tossing it into your glass to drink from. No, that would be something considered similar to استعمال. تمام. قال فلا يحرم به استعمال الإناء مطلقا ولا يكره, إن تسمير that we just mentioned. قال وكذا لو شرب بكفه وفي أصبعه خاتم. Well, if there's an argument that if the dabba is on the edge of where you're going to put your mouth on that utensil, like your mug, we said there's a debate there, right? That if your mouth touches that, that would be like you utilizing gold or silver, right? Or silver, according to the Mu'tamad opinion, right? That is not the Mu'tamad opinion, but that's an opinion within the school, right? The Mu'tamad is that doesn't matter if your mouth touches it or not. The opposing opinion says it does, because you putting your mouth on it would equal to you using it. Okay? Now, let's look in a different scenario. Well, what if I have a ring on my finger and I'm drinking out of a faucet using my hand? Not like a fountain like you have in many different places, but this is a faucet and you put your hand in the water and you're drinking out of your hand, but you have a ring on. Would this impact? Well, according to the Mu'tamad, it shouldn't. لا يكره. That's why he says وكذا لو شرب بكفه وفي أصبعه خاتم, لا يكره. كلام جميل. لا يكره. طيب, ممتاز, جميل جدا جدا جدا. Forget about a ring. أو في فمه دراهم. Somebody's stealing money and you have 2 gold coins. So you hide them in your mouth. And you want to make yourself look busy as they're walking by. That is a crazy scenario. Maybe something from the Wild West, but let's run with it. So you have the gold coins in your mouth and you lean next to a faucet, right? And you're drinking from it. هل يكره؟ لا يكره هذه الحالة. Essentially, even if it was makruh, it wouldn't be because you're afraid someone takes your money, right? So there'll be an exception to the rule there. But we'll say it's not that someone is going to take your money. You're changing and drinking at the same time. I don't know. It's probably the best way to get to it. But we could add in another scenario. What if you have a golden tooth or a silver tooth and it was out of necessity because you needed the tooth? Would that be considered using? Again, no, due to necessity. قال أو شرب بكفيه وفيها دراهم. You have some money in your hand, a couple silver coins, and you're leaning forward and you're drinking, and the water is touching the coins in your hand and then going into your mouth. يكره؟ لا يكره. He says ويجوز استعمال أواني المشركين إن كانوا لا يتعبدون باستعمال النجاسة كأهل الكتاب فهي كآنية المسلمين. Well, sadly, Ahlul Kitab since his time to our time have changed greatly, right? So he's saying that you can utilize the utensils of Ahlul Kitab with the condition that they do not do ta'abbud with najasa. Well, yes, they don't do ta'abbud with najasa, but every other thing that they eat is somewhat najis, at least in the Shafi'i school, right? A lot of people don't understand is that in the Shafi'i school, most Christians today, we don't even consider them Christians. Okay, the other schools disagree with us on this. Yes. Kalam Jameel. But how many times since the time of the Prophet ﷺ has the Bible actually changed? And the creed actually changed quite often. Quite frequently, right? Can't deny that. I mean, technically, the whole Protestant movement is on the verge of being a complete new religion. And you don't even get me started on Southern Baptists. So for the Shafi'iyya, a lot of these newer Christians are very problematic. A lot of times Shafi'i scholars will bite their tongue in different settings and issues, in order to give da'wah a chance, right? But realistically, based upon the rules of our school, people like Protestants, Southern Baptists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, all of these people are not Christians. What about Catholics and Eastern Orthodox and Coptics? They're probably closer to Christianity that was around during the time of the Prophet ﷺ than maybe not even Catholics, really. Maybe mostly just Orthodox and Coptics. That would probably be your closest form of Christianity that was there around the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But how much has it changed since then? Oh, so much, right? So much. And this is where Imam Shafi'i himself, in his time, he was having a problem with most of what people called Christianity. That it just wasn't the same. Tamam? Allah al-Musta'an. If the people are classified as Ahlu Kitabin and they are not utilizing najasa for ta'abbud, then the default position would be the allowance of using their utensils. The problem with this statement, however, is they cook with either something with related or connected to alcohol or swine. And if not, then it's maita. Maita. They don't even slaughter correctly anymore, right? Unless maybe if you can find out or determine that it's from a kosher slaughterhouse, مثلا. That would be the closest thing that you get. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. It's a very difficult discussion. قال لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم توضأ من مزادة مشركة. That's like a leather sack with water in that people used to use when they're traveling. Kalam Jamil. In other words, if someone from those that are called Christians hand you a bottle of water, you can use it. If they hand you a flask, obviously the answer would be no, that's not the same, because we know from their traditions a flask usually has some sort of alcohol in it, right? So you'll go back to that urf and utilize that as a determination. قال ولكن يكره استعمالها لعدم تحرزهم. That's in the mazada, a leather sack, because they did used to use it with wine or ale, right, back in the old days. Today, because of plastic, a bottle of water might not be makruh or anything like that, because the possibilities that they use it for something else would be obvious by just simply looking at it. قال فإن كانوا يتدينون باستعمال النجاسة كطائفة من المجوس, like a lot of Hindus that will bathe in urine from a cow, and other people that do crazier things, بأبوال البقر تقريبا. كلام جميل. أو تقربا عفوا. ففي جواز استعمالها وجهان أخذا من القولين في تعارض الأصل والغالب. And that's an issue in usul fiqh we'll get to in the usul classes inshallah ta'ala. But you already know the mas'ala of تعارض الأصل والظاهر, not al-ghalib but al-zahir. What is al-aslu wal-zahir? Sheikh Nicholas, do you mind sharing what you know of that qa'idah? لا بأس. Famous example I like to use. لا بأس يا أخي الحبيب, لا بأس. لا بأس. One of the examples I like to use, I think it's the easiest one really just to hop right into, is running into a room. There's a bucket of water. A dog looks at you as soon as you walk into the room. He runs off. The bucket is shaking. There's drips of water on the floor. The asl is that water was clean, that you could utilize for wudu, right? Right. Mumtaz. But the zahir, the apparent, is that dog just had his face in the water, right? Okay, so what is the hukum of that water? Well, this is what we're going to have to ask first. Did you see the dog's face in there? No. You walked in, he stared at you, he ran off, you ran towards the water, and that was the end of it. You don't know if the dog put his face there. You do see water dripping around the bucket. You did see the dog get startled and stare at you. His face could have been in there, right? But you're not certain. You don't have 100% certainty. Since that's the case where you don't have 100% certainty on what you deem as the apparent, then you go back to the asl. What's the asl? Is that the water is clean until you have certainty. That's called ta'arud al-asl wal-zahir. Tamam? Now, ta'arud al-asl wal-ghalib, right? Al-ghalib means the norm. Al-asl means the original state. And they utilize this for something like baby clothes. Baby clothes. And I'm not going to get into the issue that most people in the Middle East hate to use diapers. That's another discussion for another day, because I have plenty of issues with that. So did my mother, and I believe so do all my siblings. In Egypt, they only use a diaper at night. During the day, they don't put diapers on their kids most of the time. Oh, it's new age now, so maybe things have changed, but I'm talking back in the 90s, that's how it was. Kalam Jamil. No, people would go go buy 7 diapers at a time, for the week. And that was it. In America, you'd buy 1,000. You're looking for a wholesaler to buy as much as you can, right? So normally, the normal state of baby clothes there would be what, and even sometimes here, because at times stuff will slide through the diaper and come out to the clothes. So you have a higher probability and norm of baby clothes having some sort of najasa on it, right? You don't want to go with babies in diapers? Fine, let's go with toddlers who are being potty trained. I think we can all assess that the norm, the ghalib, is that their clothes are what? Dirty, right? Najis. But we don't treat it as such. So you'll take your son, he'll stand behind you, you're not going to smell his pants. Tamam? They'll pray with you and we'll treat it based upon al-asl. Why do we leave the ghalib, the norm, and go to the asl, necessity? He says, وَالْأَصَحُ الْجَوَازِ لكن يكره استعمال أوانيهم وملبوسهم وما يلي أسفلهم. That would be like you, يعني, having direct contact with a toddler's underwear. No. When we're talking about the norm and the original rule, we're just speaking about their clothes in general. Underwear? No. Nope. I have a 6-year-old, right? When he's changing, I'm like, you know where the washing machine is? You know where that is? Don't give it to me. I'm not touching it. Lost your mind? Because we know, right? You know that there's going to be errors and mistakes. Tamam? So he says, لكن يكره بالنسبة for those that are Majus, some of the Hindus, as I mentioned, right? One might even argue like underwear of a toddler, inside onesies of babies and things like that. It might be makruh. You want to be away from that the most, right? أي مما يلي الجلد أشد. That which comes in contact with the skin is going to be worse. وأواني مائهم أخف. نعم. The buckets, containers, bottles, pots, and pans of those that يعني indulge in najasa, kalam jamil, would be in an easier status than maybe their internal clothes, their underwear and whatnot. قال ويجري الوجهان في أواني مدمن الخمر. The same would go for those who are يعني that have drinking addictions or who drink in general, because you just never know. You know, in the West, and people with beer, I mean, it's everywhere. Literally everywhere. Tamam? والقصابين. Al-Qassab is a butcher. A butcher's work clothes you want to stay away from. Tamam? الذين لا يحترزون من النجاسة. Those that don't care about the filth. But realistically, most butchers will have what? Work clothes, even a coat that they wear, almost like doctors wear. And so you want to avoid those work clothes in general. تمام. والأصح الجواز أي مع الكراهة أغذى مما مر. It might be makruh in some of يعني what we mentioned, and every situation will be different depending on the individual that you are dealing with. Here we're going to stop, inshallah ta'ala. Now, next we have a siwak. And when it comes to a siwak, there's homework for you. I want you to read everything that has to do with the siwak. I won't be reading it. Kalam Jamil. So I want you to read everything about the siwak. Any questions that you might have, you can present. And we're starting on al-wudu in our next class, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, which would be on the 25th. Bi'idhnillah. Tamam? Well, everyone go for now. See you in the usul class that we have coming up. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.